This week on Barbell Shrugged, we talked to Chad Wesley Smith, founder of Juggernaut Training Systems, really strong powerlifter. The guy squats over 900 pounds. I'm sure he's got plenty to say about getting strong in CrossFit. Let's check it out.
Didn't he also write Jurassic Park?
I think he may have, dude. Shit. Barbell Shrugged is brought to you by you. To learn more about how you can support the show, go to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe here with Doug Larson and CTP behind the camera. And we traveled to Encinitas, California to hang out and surf and maybe squeeze in some podcasts. Chad Smith has decided to travel down to hang out with us. He drove all the way down from Orange County.
Treacherous
drive out here. And was it too bad this morning?
No, I was expecting some traffic, but it gave me extra breakfast burrito time.
It's an important time.
When you're in SoCal, breakfast burritos are where it's at. It'll help you get bigger. And you're going for the bloat right now.
Oh yeah,
since you got a powerlifting meet this weekend, so you're just getting as big as possible.
I was going to cut to 308s to try and go after a world record, and then realized I like to eat too much, so I just gave up on that.
What are you shooting for, a world record total? Or one of the specific lifts?
Now that I'm lifting at super heavyweight, it's just going to be PRs. But yeah, in shape for some big PRs, I think. So and a big, very big total.
Cool. Yeah. What are your lifts right now?
PRs currently are 905 in this. This is all raw, like just belt and knee reps. 905 in the squat, 515 in the bench, 788 in the deadlift.
Nice.
So
yeah. Those are big numbers. Yeah, so for those of you at home that don't know, Chad he runs Juggernaut Training Systems. And Juggernaut, I think everyone's probably heard that name. You may have not been to the website, but you should probably check it out. You popped up on my radar for the first time when I read an article in regard to CrossFit. It was like a strength training template for CrossFitters. Just kind of like a suggestion on how to like manage strength training while doing CrossFit and balancing all that. And I think it opened up a lot of people were referencing it, and they were asking me about it. And I checked it out, and that was like the first time I was kind of exposed to you on that. When did that come out?
Oh man, that article is almost 3 years old now at this point, and it just kind of came about from going to one of the CrossFit powerlifting seminar certifications. I don't know what the word they allow to be used these days. Or if
it's always a mystery.
Yeah, but just popped over to one in CrossFit 714 in Orange, and kind of helped out Mark Bell and Jesse Burdick when they were still doing them.
Oh, cool.
And started hearing the people's questions and seeing what they were doing and seeing some flaws in what it seemed like a lot of the people were doing. So sort of threw my 2 cents in.
What was the key takeaway from that article?
I think a lot of it, and a lot of really what we try and do at Juggernaut, is just to make sure that people are examining where the information the information they're looking at comes from, because there's so much information out on the internet, and anyone who has a website can be an expert, and that's a bit of a dangerous thing. So as the CrossFitters
they let us on the internet. What the hell?
Yeah, as the CrossFitters look at it, they need to look at what's more similar to their sport. CrossFit is really much more Olympic weightlifting based than powerlifting based, and even if it is powerlifting based, it's much more raw powerlifting based than geared powerlifting based. And everyone will always say, "Oh, Juggernaut, they bash on gear, they bash on Westside, whatever it is." I'm not saying that lifting in gear is wrong. If you want to do that, go for it. It's not for me, but people need to understand it's a different sport. So if you're trying to teach someone how to squat and you're telling them to sit, back, and keep this vertical shin angle, well, that's great when you have 3 layers of canvas to sit back into.
Yeah.
But when you don't,
yeah,
it's not the same thing. And there's a reason why, whether it's Andre Milanichev or me, Eric Lillibridge, Brandon Lilly, Dan Green, the training that we do looks a certain way and our technique looks a certain way, and what those guys do is different. So that was kind of the biggest thing, that they just need to take that into consideration.
Yeah. I will say this is I remember years ago that was a big thing with a little bit of a disconnect, just what you said with powerlifting versus CrossFit is like, the gear versus non-gear and the technique related to that. But I think since then, a lot of the powerlifting world has kind of like opened up to, because a lot of powerlifters have gone from gear to raw as well, and they've had to change their technique.
Definitely.
I know a lot of guys like out of Westside and stuff that now like they're closer to a high bar and their shins are going forward a little bit and all that. Like I talked to AJ Roberts about it, and when he came and did a powerlifting thing at our box, he was like, oh, this is it depends on the person if you're wearing gear or not. So I think a lot of people open their eyes to that, and I think that you guys started pointing that out a few years ago then, huh?
Yeah, probably. That's kind of been day one when I started writing articles. Let's point it out, because I was 19, 20 years old. I'm 27 right now, and like reading this stuff, and I didn't realize like that they were what geared powerlifting was. I didn't know that it was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
They say a squat suit, and I think like, so it's like the thing you wear when you squat. I remember even getting ready to do my.
You thought it was like a singlet or something?
Yeah, I remember getting ready to do my first powerlifting meet and going to buy a singlet and being like, why does this one cost $50 and this one costs $300? Like, is this one better? And so there just need to be like an asterisk next to it that's like geared powerlifter writing for geared powerlifters.
Yeah.
Not that that's wrong or whatever. It's just, it is what it is, and people need to understand that, because there's not those asterisks next to it. And people could say, oh, you're naive that you didn't realize that. I'm pretty smart about lifting weights, so if I was naive about it, there's a lot of other people who probably are as well.
Well, you're a young guy. You came along when powerlifting was going through a big change.
Certainly.
Because, I think, so it was only 3 or 4 years ago when like every powerlifter was like geared.
Yeah.
And now like raw is, like, a lot of guys left that. I think they kind of hit their plateau or a peak, and now they're, chasing the raw numbers now. Yeah,
probably one of the most notable guys there and one of our main athletes on Juggernaut is Brandon Lilly, who came out and he had done 26-12 in multiply and was a Westside guy, and then now he's gone 22-37 raw, and even he hadn't put his gear on in 9 months, and when he hit that 26-12 total, it was all raw training, and then he put his gear back on and figured out that he was a lot stronger.
Yeah.
You said earlier that people think that you guys bash on Westside. Is that true, or is that just what people say, or is that a big confusion, or what's the story there?
I think it's people have so much ownership of the type of training they do, and they're passionate about it, and I appreciate that, because I'm passionate about what I do, and they want to interpret, and they just take everything personally. It's like if I say that box squats and wide stance squats not the best way to train the raw squat, even that's the way that Westside does it, or that bands and chains aren't the best way to train the raw squat. I'm not saying that everyone that does that are like these evil people. It's lifting weights. Yeah,
and you're probably not saying, I'm gonna put words in your mouth for a second, but you're probably not saying that doesn't work at all. You just think that you have a slightly better way. Is that kind of what you guys are getting at?
Yeah, minus slightly.
You think it's way better?
You go look at the raw world records. Like, no one that has raw world records trains in that style. Maybe out of the whole list, men's, women's, with knee wraps, without knee wraps, drug tested, non-drug tested, every single weight class, like 200 records. There's like 4 names on it that are doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know the list, so.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I'll take your word for it, since I don't follow powerlifting that close.
Okay, so a lot of the CrossFit community is familiar with Westside, because that's kind of what's in that community at the moment. But what do you guys do that's different than the Westside method? If you could kind of break down each different training methodology and kind of show where you guys are better for raw lifters, or for people that are training for pure strength for CrossFit that have no interest in competing in geared powerlifting.
I think the CrossFit discussion is a pretty big separate topic in and of itself. But I'll say with CrossFit, and this kind of lead me into the raw, is that there's so many skills and so many qualities that you need to develop in CrossFit that if you change the bar every week, or you change the exercise every week, now you're just increasing that pool of exercises that you need to improve at. But, the sport for them is not squatting. It is not deadlifting. It's not benching. It's all these different things. So you need to pick the lowest cost, lowest energy cost, lowest time cost exercises to improve. So if I'm changing exercise every single week, plus Olympic lifting, plus gymnastics, all this other stuff, how are they ever going to actually improve on, get good enough at those exercises to get a good stimulus out of it? And the same thing holds true for raw powerlifters and powerlifters in general. I think just strength athletes in general is that if you're a competitive powerlifter, your sport is the squat, bench, and deadlift. The way that you do it in competition. Straight bar, no box, no bands, no chains. And so what we're doing, and everyone who writes on Juggernaut, they don't all train the same. They train a little bit different. Greg Panora was the 242's world record holder at Westside, and now he trains raw, and he still does some Westside type stuff. But if you're changing exercise all the time and using this big exercise pool, you don't get to practice your sport, And when your sport is squat, bench, and deadlift, the way it's done in competition, you need to practice that all the time. It would be like a basketball player, only doing drills. You do all the layup drills you want. You do all the 2-on-1, 3-on-1 weave drills you want.
Yeah.
That's great, and that can address a part of the sport, and specialty bars and bands and chains can address parts of the lift. But if you don't, if you're a basketball player and you don't play 5-on-5, you don't scrimmage, then you're not ready to play basketball.
So you don't like the variety of squat bars and bench, different ways of varying the bench, half of the training. So on max effort days with that, they vary that, but they don't really vary the dynamic effort days. So about half the training is practice and the other half is kind of like strength training and then a ton of assistance work, obviously. And so do you advocate the same amount of assistance work, or, I know you're talking about variety in the squat, but.
Yeah. It's not even that I'm not advocating exercise variety. It's just that the foremost point of the training always has to be the competitive exercise. So I do exercise variations, but the idea of adaptation and where people are saying, if you don't change exercises more often, it's gonna lose its stimulus. Well, between the time that I squat 800 and 905, I had 45 squat training sessions.
Yeah.
42 of 45 of them were the squat with the bar, where I put it in competition and just plates on the bar.
Gotcha.
45 of 45 bench training sessions were the bench with the pause on my chest, and 45 of 45 deadlift training sessions were deadlift in my competitive stance from the floor.
And you're not a new to the sport guy, so I think a lot of times people who are more advanced want that more variety or need that more variety, but I guess that wasn't the case with you.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the best powerlifter in the world, Andrei Milanichev, 24-69 and a belt in knee reps. His entire training is the squat, bench, and deadlift with no assistance work and no variations, because the better you get at the sport, the less things will transfer over to it. So he needs to use only the most specific. So if he's the very, very, and kind of the way, I do seminars and clinics, but every other weekend, once a month, and people come with this idea a lot. How many exercise variations should I do? And they want to talk about, well, Milanichev does this and he's the best, so I should do that too. Yeah. Well, whoever is asking the question at the seminar, you're not Milanichev, I'm not Milanichev. I don't need that much specificity, and then someone who's less qualified as a lifter than I am won't need quite as much specificity as I do. But so the way that I explain it is like a pyramid, where Milanichev, or if we're talking weightlifting, Ilya Ilyin, who's also Bulgarian system lifter, right. So he just snatch, clean and jerk, squat. They're the tip of the pyramid. They're the very top, highest qualified, best ever.
Yeah.
There's very few things that fit on the tip of the pyramid with them. Very few exercises. As you go down that pyramid, the base of it, people who step in the gym for their first day, you could improve your squat. When you start lifting, day one, you could squat, you could box squat, you could front squat, you could leg press, you could leg extension, you could hamstring curl, you could do a lunge. You could just think about squatting and your squat will go up.
Right.
So many exercises that will improve you then. But as you move up in qualification, it has to become more specific and more specific. So I use exercise variations, but I think what a lot of people get caught up with who train Westside system is that they make the exercise choices too broad. And yeah, it's like cool or sexy or whatever to put a YouTube video up and you got bands and chains and reverse bands and a safety squat bar to a foam box. Well, there's a lot of things going on there. My exercise variation, competition squat, front squat, Olympic squat, pause squat.
Yeah.
all pretty similar. And the more similar they get, the more specific and higher degree of transfer they're going to have.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to people, and we talk about people who are the best in the world, I usually tell them not to look at the best of the world. Like, because you look at the Bulgarians, people talk about the Bulgarians, but how many weightlifters did they burn so that Ilya could be the best? You know what I mean? Like that style, you know?
Yeah, and people get caught up looking at what the best in the world are doing right now.
Right.
And
not how they got there.
I was at the Klokov Ilyan seminar at Waxman's Gym up in LA in December. And everyone wants to ask, oh, Klokov, how many sets and reps of this do you do? What percentage should I do? And it's like, don't ask him that. Ask him, hey, 15 years ago, what did you do? You know, because that's where they are. 20 years ago, what did you do? And that's what they need to figure out. And Ilya, you know, said it through a translator, but he started lifting weights when he was 6 years old. And he said he was like hyper, so his mom would just send him to the weightlifting gym with his brother.
Yeah.
And again, through the translator, I would run around the gym and do all the exercises. Now, of course, that didn't just mean he did whatever he wanted, because I don't think little kids in Kazakhstan and Russia are like allowed to do whatever they want. But
Seriously doubt it.
Yeah. But, you know, he did a very general program. He learned a lot of movement patterns. He did gymnastics and track and field based stuff and swam and ran and did all these body weight exercises. And then as he said by the time that he was 18, he had no relative weaknesses. So all he needed to do then was the competitive lifts and squat.
Yeah.
So he started with the base of the pyramid, tons of exercises. And then as he moved up in qualification, the exercise became more and more focused and more specific.
Yeah, I think people, like a guy like that, though, is going to win no matter what. He's going to be a champion whether he does a highly varied program or a not so varied program, or, you know, a very Bulgarian-ish program. And you look at a guy like Klokov, he obviously, it's like he's doing something different every single day, right? Post that on Instagram. So, like, and what these guys say and what they do, especially with the Bulgarians, I don't believe that shit. They're like, oh, I only do front squat, cleans, and snatches. And then, like, you'll catch, like, a video on we do no pulls. But then you see, like, a video and they're doing pulls, like, at the training, like in the training hall at the Olympics or something.
Well, I think
like, they're full of shit now.
I think what they do is the most specific. And, like, Klokov is now a Juggernaut sponsored athlete, and have him for,
even though he's doing all that variety.
Well, you got to look at what he's doing right now. He's not getting ready for a weightlifting meet right now. He's making a lot of Instagram videos, so a lot of CrossFitters.
Well, it's still 2 years out, so
yeah, we'll see if.
Oh no, he'll definitely. I mean, that's how training for any competition works.
Yeah.
Highly varied. When you're away from a competition, as you get closer to competition, you increase the amount of specific exercises and decrease the amount of variation. And I mean, that's common amongst all strength and conditioning, really.
And even as you're looking at, you know, he's doing all these different things. Like, yeah, he's doing those conditioning workouts with the rowing and whatever, and he does like the circus trick, like, you know, squat front raise, snatch front raise moves. But for the most part, every video he posts is like a pause snatch or a snatch from deficit or a snatch, a push press or a jerk.
Overhead squatting a hot chick.
Yeah. Overhead squatting hot chicks.
Oh, yeah.
Number one way to raise your testosterone without drugs.
And to get more Instagram followers.
Yeah.
Are you guys on board with doing the 1 day heavy, 1 day speed per week? You guys do like the heavy max effort and the dynamic effort method? You guys do it similar?
Yeah, personally, I don't do that. But, you know, I'm not one to say like, yeah, there's a book called The Juggernaut Method, but I don't think the Juggernaut Method's for everyone. I don't think Westside's for everyone. I don't think the Cube Method is for everyone, 5-3-1, whatever it is. Like, I'm an advocate of you needing to do what helps you improve. Mm-hmm. So I came from a track and field background. I was 2-time national champion in the shot put. I don't need to do speed work. I weighed 290 pounds and had a 36-inch vertical and jumped on a 50-inch box. Like, I just squat fast in all my warm-up sets, and I'm fast.
But you were doing Westside when you were throwing.
I did do Westside when I was throwing, yeah.
Yeah. So you had a lot of success there.
Within the context, yeah, but if I was to go back and do it again, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So what made you, like, change it? I mean, what moment where you were like, oh, this isn't the best for my training now?
I did a lot of box squats, and then I took the box away and realized I sucked at squatting.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, you went from geared lifter to raw lifter.
I've never lifted in gear.
Oh, you never lifted in gear?
No.
Okay, so you were box squatting, and that transferred over well to, say, shot put.
Yeah.
But maybe not to actually being a raw powerlifter is what you're saying.
Correct. And for the athletes, the training of athletes is a totally different issue. You know, in the shot put ring, there's no squat bar. So
right.
front squat, back squat, box squat, high bar, low bar. I don't care. Get some stimulus for your legs to get stronger. You know, I think the box squat's great for athletes because it doesn't make you sore, you know, or it makes you less sore.
Right.
So it's not going to interfere as much with the rest of your training because
I heard Rich running box squats.
oh, if Rich running does it.
Is that the trump card?
No, I'm just fucking with you.
That is one of the best parts about them, though. I can box squat and it doesn't beat me up very much at all. And that's fantastic because I'm always fucked up.
Yeah, so that can be a really valuable thing. But as you look, you know, the training of any athlete, the only thing that can't be replaced in an athlete's training is sport practice. You want to be a football player, and you have some elbow injury and you can't clean, or you know you can't bench, or you suck at squatting. Well, you can still be a football player as long as you practice football. You know, you could still be a CrossFitter and box squat because chances are there's never going to be a max squat event in a CrossFit competition.
Not since 2007.
Yeah,
Not unless we say it on here. Then it'll probably happen.
It'll happen. Well, if we say it's never going to happen, they'll throw it in the open.
Yeah, OC Throwdown had OC Throwdown had a max squat event, but Diamond, you know, it's never
very
really
rare.
happened.
I would say this: nobody practices squatting more than CrossFitters. Those people, me being one of them, we squat all the time. I mean, maybe an air squat, but like, you know, in a workout, if you do 300 squats in a workout, that's not uncommon. I don't know any powerlifters that are doing 300 squats in a workout.
No,
I'm not sure, you know, the technique's not all the same. I get that, but like, you know, those guys are getting deep all the time. So box squat might not be so bad for a CrossFitter. I would imagine.
Well,
so
like
they
I
can
said,
save their legs.
The you know, squatting is not necessarily a part of their sport,
Right.
so they can replace it with other exercises.
Yeah, they may get a benefit out of that.
Yeah, but I did bring up the issue of like box squatting, low bar squatting, cleans with bands. I know is something you guys have discussed. I brought that up at the seminar with Vasily Polovnikov, 9-time Soviet champion.
Yeah.
And once I explained, like, demonstrated to him what they were, because he, you know, I'd say it and he didn't know. The response to all three was mostly, no, this not good idea.
All right, I'll tell you this. I did the banded power clean and jerk at Westside, and it was extremely novel. I think the only reason I was able to pull it off is because I'm pretty good at weightlifting. Like, anyone who's not pretty good is gonna get. Well, I had some people that aren't pretty good try it. It wasn't pretty. And I you know, was it Travis Mash coaches me? Like, he writes my program right now, and you know, I do banded pulls. I may do some, you know, chained front squats with pauses and stuff like that. But yeah, that type of training, the accommodating resistance is minimal.
Yeah, and
it's really small. And you know, I imagine only people who have been weightlifting for a while need to even play around with that for a small portion. You know, like maybe a third of the time type of thing.
Oh yeah, I think, you know, even saying need to play around with it. I don't know if need's the right word there.
You don't need to, but why not?
Did you get a lot of Instagram followers though?
Let's
talk about something important.
I got a shit ton of Instagram followers. Yeah, I broke a band. It was crazy.
Because Travis is the only weightlifter of any appreciable qualification that I've seen who's actually spent some time doing that stuff. Yeah. And this was, you know, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago now when he finished powerlifting and wanted to get back into weightlifting. And I mean, even he's not going to advocate the way that he was doing it.
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I'm friends with Travis and a really good dude, and one of the reasons I wanted him to program for me is because he's the only person I know that has trained at the Olympic Training Center as a weightlifter, and you know, been a world champion powerlifter. I was like, if anyone knows how to get strong, it's probably Travis. So he's like the guy I trust to do my stuff.
Oh, yeah, Travis is a great guy. I got to meet him for the first time actually at Sorenex Summer Strong last summer. Oh yeah. So we'll see him again in about 3 weeks out there.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so what do you propose? Like, you know, a CrossFitter, you know, what is a training program? You know, and obviously things are going to change throughout the year as competitions get closer and stuff like that. But what do you advocate like CrossFitters do for strength training? How it fits, you know, in their program?
Find out right after this break.
All right, we'll take a break and we'll get that question.
Welcome back to Technique Wad. I'm Doug Larson with the Barbell Shrug Podcast. This is video number 5 in the squat series, and we're talking about box squats. All right, so if you haven't been watching the rest of the squat series, video number 1 was the overview video. We actually talked a little bit about box squats in that very first video, because that's a very easy way to learn how to squat, is starting off of a box. So we're going to touch on it again today. As I said, video number 2 was front squats. Video number 3 was back squats, and then video number 4 last week was on spotting all different types of squats, front squats, back squats, and then again on box squats, and we'll touch on that again today as well. First, a lot of CrossFitters don't tend to do a lot of box squats, even though powerlifting has really kind of moved into the CrossFit community. Still, it's one of the squats that gets used the least, in part because you just don't put box squats in a Metcon or in a WOD for the most part. You use it for your strength work, which is fantastic, but it's not really in a lot of Metcons, so usually new athletes don't get introduced to box squats until they've been doing CrossFit for quite some time, and then they might get it as part of their strength program once they get a little bit more experience. So for me, the reason I like box squats is it's one more variation of squatting that you can do. Typically weightlifting style squatting, front squats, overhead squats, high bar Olympic style back squats. You tend to be very vertical with your torso, and it tends to be a very knee dominant style of squatting. Granted, you're still using your hips and all your leg muscles, and all those muscles are being used, so it's not like you're not using your hips, but low bar back squats, powerlifting style box squats, and just powerlifting style squats in general, low bar, wide stance, etc., they tend to be more of a hip dominant style squat, a glute dominant style squat. So today, if you haven't done a lot of box squatting before, it's a variation that you might want to pay attention to and that you might want to incorporate into your training down the line, because it'll help balance out the type of squatting that you're used to if you have always been doing more Olympic style squatting. This is a good variation to add to your programming. So if you haven't seen box squatting before, a lot of different variations that you could use. For the most part, you're just going to set up with a slightly wider stance than you normally would. If I do, front squats right here, box squats, I tend to go a little bit wider. I like that because sitting down onto a box with a very narrow stance, you'll tend to kind of drop straight down, and that's not very good box squat technique, even though in weightlifting you might do that sometimes. So generally I go a little bit wider, and then if you go a little wider, I tend to toe out just a little bit more. I'd find that if I go toes straight ahead with a super wide stance, then my femur's going that way and my toes are going this way, and that twists my knee too far the opposite way. Usually people toe out like this and their knee goes in and you twist your knee to the outside, but I find if I go toes straight ahead with a super wide stance, when I push my knees out, now my knee's being twisted the opposite way. You can get problems both ways, even though knees diving in with toes pointed out is more common. So a wider stance is okay. Knees wide over toes, like we always do. From the side, I'm going to want to land with a vertical shin, obviously a tight back, heels on the ground. What do people do wrong oftentimes with box squats is that, again, they stand too close together, and then they go straight down, and then they end up with this very forward shin angle. Okay? It's not the end of the world, but with box squatting, for the most part, you want to land with a vertical shin. So the reason I like box squatting with new people is you can have them just sit down on a box, tell them to sit up nice and tall, and you can physically grab their leg and move their foot where you want it, put their toes whatever direction you want them, and then you can say, okay, this is your perfect stance. They know exactly where to put their feet, they know exactly what position they need to be in, and then they can learn the movement from the bottom up. Okay? Now I don't have to figure out where to put my feet. I already know that when I sit back down, butt back, vertical shin, that I'm going to land in a good spot because I set up from the bottom at the start. So that's one of the reasons I like box squats, is because it's so much easier to teach new people how to get into a good position at the bottom of the movement. Okay?
Drake loves those squats.
Who?
Drake?
Drake.
Rapper.
Rappers love squats. Everybody knows that. So if you watch the overview video, you'll remember that the 3 big things that I always touch on with squatting is neutral spine, heels down, knees out over your feet. So you never want to round your back, you never want to be on your toes, you never want your knees to dive towards each other. Those are the 3 big things that I constantly focus on. With box squatting, I usually add a 4th thing, and that's vertical shin. Granted, on regular squatting, you want to have a vertical shin as much as possible, but if you're doing Olympic style squatting, again, overhead squats, front squats, and high bar back squats, unless you have very good weightlifting leverage, you're probably not going to really have a vertical shin, especially at the very bottom of the movement. But with box squatting, you're going to. Okay? So we have a couple options as far as what you can actually squat down to and sit down onto. You can see here I have, This is actually made for box squatting, and it's adjustable, but usually what we do is just leave it on the lowest setting, and then if we want to raise it up, we usually just put a plate down. A heavy 25 kilo plate isn't going to slide around, so we use that. Or if you have this is a 12-inch box, and then we have mats. These are nice, nice light foam mats that are easy to slip on and slip off, especially if you have a bunch of people that are squatting in a flight like you would in powerlifting. It's easy to have one person here and then just take off two, and then when that person comes back, you can just slide them back on, and you can change the height very quickly and very easily. Another benefit of having the mats is that if I squat 5 sets of 5, and I'm at this height 1 week, then the next week I can keep the same weight, and then as a part of my progression, I can just slide a mat off, and then the next week I can just squat a little lower, and then the next week I can just slide another mat off, and I can squat a little lower, and it's one more way to have a progression where you're having a training variable adjusted, but it's not necessarily just adding 5 pounds every week. You're starting with a lot of weight at a higher box squat height, and that's going to allow you normally to do a little more weight, and then you can slowly get lower and lower over time. So each successive week gets a little bit more difficult, and then you have that built-in progression. Okay. The other thing that I like to do with box squats, is use a safety bar. I'm going to borrow Chris Moore for the safety bar session.
Well.
Your time has come.
Have I been on Technique Lab before?
I don't know, has he? I think so.
It's been a long time, man. I can hardly remember.
Didn't you do a technique WOD on chains and bands or good mornings in your garage one time?
I guess I did. It's been like about a
year. You don't remember.
I don't remember.
Cool story, bros.
Yeah, right.
Edit that shit out.
Okay, so Chris is going to use the safety bar. Go ahead and step in there. Sometimes we'll use a bench. Here's the third option that I was going to talk about. If you just want to have a set height, using a bench is just fine, but it's harder to add something like a weight plate or these bigger mats to adjust the height of a bench. You can put the plates underneath it if you wanted to. We've done that before, but for the most part, I don't really adjust the height of the bench very often. I usually do that with the boxes. But if you look at Chris from the side, I'll go ahead and unrack the bar. So he's using a safety bar. You can use whatever specialty bars you want. Box squatting with a safety bar or a giant camera bar is super common. But you can see Chris is very tall here. He's going to brace his core, get nice and tight, and then his hips are going to go back. He's going to try and keep that vertical shin as best he can. He's going to sit all the way down. Usually we like to rock back. Okay, he gets all the way back to a vertical torso. He's basically just sitting there. He's still tight here, but he's rocked all the way back, and he is sitting all the way down. Then he's going to rock forward at the hips, keeping that tight back, and he's going to push the floor apart, activating his glutes right off of the bench. A common thing to happen is that guys they push with their quads right off the bench, and they don't really try and squeeze their butt and squeeze their glutes right off the bench. So he wants to fire his glutes right off the bench. And the benefit of sitting all the way down is that you're killing all of your momentum and you're killing the bounce. A lot of guys like to bounce out of the hole. Well, with a box squat, it's kind of nice to be able to go down, sit all the way down. All that stretch shortening cycle plyometric effect is eliminated, and you don't get that soft tissue bounce where your tendons stretch and then contract. Okay? You're killing all that momentum, and then you have to use pure raw strength off of the bench, and that's just one more way to help yourself get a little bit stronger. All right, we're back. I'm going to do some demos. Chris had something else to do.
So sad. All right, we gotta get out of here, man. Sorry. Shit. Okay, you gonna live? You gonna survive this turmoil? Yeah. This strife? It's hot and you're tired, and you got a show of your face, and you're really sad. Oh man.
All right, a few errors. Number one, you always want to butt back, knees out, and then sit nice and soft down on the bench. You obviously never want to just go down and just like crash down on the bench. If this is really heavy, this is a very hard stop, and you're going to fold, and it's going to fucking break your back. So you don't want to do that. So, maybe a 2 or 3 count on the way down, sit down real nice, and then on the way up, you want to lean forward a tiny bit just to get the weight back over your heels, but you don't ever want to try and get momentum and like rock out of the hole, especially with a safety bar. It's high. This is sticking forward and the weight is in front. It's going to make it want to roll, okay? This wants to be vertical, right? That wants to be like that. And so it's going to, as I go forward, it's going to want to keep rolling forward. And I've had it before where I've gone like this, and then it's like, and it just tips you forward. So if you have a spotter, not the end of the world, but that's just bad technique no matter what. So you're going to lean forward and then try and come straight up. So I'm here, lean forward a little bit, and then my hips come forward right off the box. Try and keep that vertical shin the whole time. Right to here. At the top, I'm squeezing my glutes together. I don't end hyperextended like this. On my way up, I'm squeezing my glutes, and I'm pulling my hips all the way through at the top. So my ribs are down, my butt is squeezed, I have a neutral spine, and I'm not broken like this, okay? That means also if I start like this, then I don't break before I go down. I just bend forward a little bit with that neutral spine without hyperextending and getting that little bit of a tilt with my pelvis, okay? So I'm here, knees out, butt back, ribs stay down, butt's still trying to squeeze. Sit down real nice, rock forward, come up, squeeze your glutes to the top. So box squats are also fantastic for people that don't have very good squatting leverage. If you have a short torso, long femurs, long limbs in general, that's not good squatting leverage. So box squats are gonna make it easier for you to do a full depth squat, squatting down to whatever you choose. And it's going to be much easier for you to box squat if you are a very tall athlete or an athlete that just is very lanky if you're doing box squats instead. And I kind of don't have very good squatting leverage, so if I have a little bit of a wider stance, if I have super long legs, I can get into this position just fine, and it might be really hard for me to sit all the way down like this if I don't have very good squatting leverage, unless I'm already very mobile. So that's another population of people that is going to it's going to be easier on your body and on your joints to do box squats if you aren't very mobile already, especially if you have very poor ankle mobility. If you look at me with a vertical shin, my ankle in this case is barely bent at all, okay? Whereas if I hop over again, if I'm at the bottom of an overhead squat or something like that, I got this forward shin angle and my ankle is bent. So if I don't have very good ankle mobility, if I don't have very good hip mobility, then it's going to be easier for me to box squat. And then slowly over time, as I get more mobility, again, I can move a mat away and I can slowly ratchet myself down, and maybe I can eventually go back to full depth front squats, back squats, or overhead squats. So it can save your joints over time if you're not very mobile. Also, if you have any injuries, then it really can help you out, especially knee injuries, even back injuries to some extent. Some people don't like box squats because they think it's hard on your back. If you're doing it correctly, then it shouldn't be. If you're sitting down nice and soft, if you're staying tight, if you have a neutral spine and you're not round, then it can be just fine on your back. And what it does is it keeps you from going too low. So if I'm a person that doesn't have very good hip mobility and I go down to here and I know that at this height, I got this box with 4 pads, or 4 mats rather, and I know I can keep my back tight there, then I'm not at risk of getting tired, getting past that depth, and then rounding and re-injuring myself, okay? Same thing with knee trouble. If I'm a person that I've been doing a lot of heavy cleans and front squats and I like to bounce out of the hole, and for some reason my knees are starting to get achy. Your knees can easily get achy if you're kind of always bouncing out of this position, okay? A lot of volume in that position, even with good technique, it's gonna cause for achy knees eventually. Even weightlifters that are, their technique is spot on and they compete all the time and they're really good at it. Still, it's a lot of wear and tear on your joints, and getting that bounce out of the hole can be hard on your joints. But with a box squat, even if you're front squatting here, I can still get into this position where my knees, again, they're not all the way in full flexion. I have a more vertical shin here than I would otherwise. And then I can just come out of the hole there. And again, if I want to go wider, I can. It's not something people do a whole lot of, but there's no reason you can't do it. So just a couple of other variations you can put into your training. So in my mind, box squats are a very safe way to squat, and there's a lot of good reasons to do them. So no squat is necessarily better than any other squat. It all just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And if you know why you're doing it, then there's nothing wrong with doing box squats, even as a replacement for high bar, full depth Olympic back squats, if you're a person that has those injuries or a lack of mobility, or you're just not really built to squat in general. So if you have any specific questions about that, you can always send us an email, or just go to barbellshrugged.com, and there's an Ask a Question tab at the top of the page. And then we also do live Q&As on occasion. You might be able to get in on one of those. So If you want to see more of the squat series, we're going to add, I'll probably do overhead squats next. You can always go to barbellshrug.com, click the episodes tab at the top of the page, click on Technique Quad, and all of our videos will be in the library. I'll see you another day.
Dreams will come true.
That's all right.
And we're back. Actually, Doug just said something that was really funny. I think everyone should hear. Say it again.
I mean, CrossFit is basically strength.
No, not that. I'm just talking about the last part. I mean, you can do that too.
No, I mean, that's really what it is. CrossFit is all strength and conditioning. And basically, what you just said is that nothing is CrossFit depending on how you look at CrossFit, and everything is CrossFit depending on how you look at CrossFit. And defining CrossFit is a very hard thing to do, and people have all these different perspectives. And so it's kind of a meaningless term, but it means everything at the same time, and it's this weird paradox.
Well, you want to say what you said, Chad, or do you want to keep that to yourself?
I'd say med ball cleans and sumo high pulls, those are uniquely CrossFit. Those are kind of their inventions.
And I don't think anyone really uses those in their training.
Yeah, I don't even think
not anymore.
I don't even think that Greg Glassman wants to claim those too as his own.
I haven't seen it on main site in forever. Yeah. No.
I mean, I define CrossFit as competing in Metcons for time.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's just strength and conditioning. But that's like specifically what I see as
you
CrossFit. You
should be doing a program, not randomly picking something out of a hopper.
Competitive exercise for time.
And something we hit on earlier is you're talking about CrossFitters and needing variety and all that kind of stuff. Is like, you know what? Most people who are strength training, they need to stick with a specific movement long enough to get good at it. And most people are like, oh, I've been training for 3 months. It's like, that you are not experienced.
Yeah.
I'm talking like maybe 2 years, probably 5. If you've been training strength training, not doing CrossFit.com WODs, strength training for 5 years, like where you're doing squats and presses and all that mess. Now you've got experience, and now maybe, variety might be something you need. But most people straight barbell, which most CrossFitters have not been strength training more than 5 years.
Definitely.
So a straight bar and just doing back squats and front squats and presses, they're probably going to see a big benefit of that. And I usually tell people, don't change anything until you stop seeing progress.
Yeah.
People they're getting progress, and they for some reason, they think they're going to get faster progress if they do something that, called shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
It's like shiny object, I heard about this new program. I'm going to go try it out. I was like, is your squat and your bench still going up? Well, maybe you should just keep doing that. And everyone wants to change for the sake of changing because the variety. But in CrossFit, there's so much variety in the conditioning. There's strength training exercises in the conditioning that, why not let that be your variety for a while, and maybe you don't need to change that variety like you're saying.
Yeah.
Barbells so often.
And even the changes in variety can be so much smaller, I think, than people give them credit for. It's like, you don't need to go to a whole new exercise or a whole new bar or whatever. You move your feet 2 inches wider, 2 inches closer, move the bar half an inch up your back, half an inch down your back. That's a change in stimulus. That's going to keep you from adapting.
Yeah, and one of the things I like to throw in for variety is just single leg work. It's like do lunges instead of squats you always want to squat every week, but if you're squatting twice a week, make that some lunges or split squats or something like that for a while. That's variety without totally having to get a new barbell or something like that. Mm-hmm. And people get a lot of benefits out of that. So what do you see, what do you think is kind of like a good template for CrossFitters to use, strength training versus conditioning? Should they be strength training 5 days a week, 3 days a week? Should kind of what's your experience with that?
Well, kind of a big question there, but
very broad. Yeah, I'll let you talk for a while.
So everyone that comes into CrossFit comes in with a unique athletic background, and they're going to have unique physical skills and traits that accompany that. So if you were to kind of look at them all within a spectrum, with the farthest right side of the spectrum being a pure speed power athlete like an Olympic weightlifter or a sprinter, and the other side of the spectrum being a pure endurance athlete like a triathlete or a marathon runner, the best CrossFitter is going to be somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit more to the right side towards the strength side of things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you need to work towards that middle ground, really. So that would be the first thing, because my answer could be totally, if you're a marathon runner or triathlete, you probably need to lift 4, 5, 6 days a week and just stay in touch with your aerobic work, because your aerobic work could get, if you're a good triathlete, your aerobic work could get worse and you'd still be the best at it.
That's right.
Or if you're a Klokov, dude could not snatch for a year, shows up 2015 CrossFit Games snatch ladder, and he still wins.
Still win. Yeah.
So that's an important thing to consider. The basic template that I use with people is they're squatting 3 times a week, they're cleaning twice, snatching twice, and doing 2 days of like pressing, upper body work, and gymnastics. And they're doing 4 real metcons and 2 days of either long and slow aerobic work or tempo style, still submaximal aerobic work. I think a big
tempo style. Are you saying intervals?
Yeah, intervals
Okay.
like Charlie Francis type of ideas. 60 to 75% intensity for 10 to 40 seconds duration, depending on the actual activity and the person, interspersed with different kind of calisthenic work or real low intensity skill work. But I think a big mistake that people make in their conditioning, well, one is a just lack of understanding of energy systems, of what is aerobic capacity training, what is lactic capacity training, what is anaerobic and alactic power and all that. So first, people need to understand that and understand the durations and output efforts that heart rates that encompass each of those things, and their training could become much more efficient right there. But I actually was writing an article about this idea is that CrossFit is always thought of like this as this general sport. CrossFit, competitive CrossFit, and understand that's the only one I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people just using it because
for fitness.
That just doesn't interest me. But
you're only interested in competitive CrossFitters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that competitive CrossFit is a sport of specificity. It's just that target of specificity is a big target.
Right.
So I'd describe it as like a dartboard, but you don't know where you have to hit on the dartboard. It's just the competition, the CrossFit
Might have
games.
to hit handstand walks.
Yeah. So the better that you can cover that dartboard, more evenly that you can cover it, the better. And the more quality training you do, the more darts you get to throw. The better chance you're gonna have to cover it. So
what would you consider sloppy training?
Is a lack of a plan, true randomness.
Yeah.
Like you can train for a wide variety, and the feels unknown and unknowable. Yeah, you still have an idea though. There's only so many things that can be.
You do know there's gonna be thrusters.
So,
guaranteed thrusters will be in there.
Yeah. So I think a problem that a lot of people have, and a mistake they make with their Metcon work, is they don't do the same thing often enough, so they can't track it. So whether you have 3 or 6 or whatever benchmark WODs or Metcons or whatever that you do, hit one of those every 3 weeks, every month, every 6 weeks, just so you know. Because if you never do the same thing, how do you know that you got better at it? It's almost same idea with always changing exercises. If I don't come back to the same exercise once but every 6 months, well, how do I know that I'm any better at it?
You might have been on the wrong track for 6 months.
Yeah.
Test and retest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And build and test and retest, and in between you got to build. So you got to address the components of it, but just have a plan. Progressively overload your conditioning work, whether that means from even if you're only doing the same one every month or 3 weeks or whatever, either do 10 more pounds on it than you did last time. Go for 2 minutes longer.
Yeah.
If it's an AMRAP, go for, try and beat the time, whatever it is. So
it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be like very linear progression.
Yeah.
Especially for conditioning.
Yeah. Just continue making some type of progress.
Do you guys program for any CrossFit athletes?
Yeah, I do quite a bit of online programming, and then we don't do the entirety of the programming for any of the sponsored CrossFitters, but it's all kind of collaborative.
Who do you guys sponsor?
Alyssa Ritchie and Jamie Hagia and Reed Worthington. So, if you've been
Alyssa got 4th in the Central East?
4th in the Central East,
right.
and Jamie was 5th in SoCal.
Okay, so what have you guys done for them specifically?
Well, Alyssa's super new. We added her like a week before Central East, so that was good timing for us. But that she went out and performed well and got a lot of new fans because she's just a tiny person, and everyone really appreciates that. They're like, I was giving her a hard time because when they posted her picture on CrossFit's Facebook, like everyone was commenting like, "Oh, you're my hero" and stuff. And they're like, "You're the same size as me." So I told her, I was like, "Everyone's a fan of you because they're the same size." I was like, "They're all 8-year-old girls, but you got a lot of new fans."
Yes, she killed it. We went to the Central East and watched. She really did a good job.
Yeah. So, the stuff that it's been helpful to work with Jamie is like when you got a deadlift and you have 800-pound deadlifters on your team, well, you learn how to deadlift pretty well, you know?
Yeah.
So small stuff like that. And Reed, I do most of his programming. He chose to go team this year, but he was like about 38th in the open or something, but it just was taking a new job. So kind of tough to get his training all organized.
So when you sign these athletes, do you put them through a process of like finding out where their weaknesses are prior to writing their program, or how do you handle new athletes?
Yeah, the online training athletes, and that's not a huge component of my personal business, but as I was talking about, everyone exists within that spectrum. You just need to find out where they are in that, and what's going to allow you to work towards that. So if you have someone who's super strong, even though my preferred template is squatting 3 times a week, maybe they only need to squat twice a week. Maybe they only need to squat once a week, and the other day could be dedicated towards just unilateral work or mobility work. We have another CrossFitter who we just had, CrossFitter/powerlifter, a guy named James Townsend, who you'll know about James Townsend. Even if he doesn't become a great CrossFitter, you'll know about him because dude is a freak. Like hang power snatched 315.
Yeah.
Jumped on a 64-inch box. He was a wide receiver for the Bears for 2 years. 44-inch vertical his pro day, ran a 4.30. He has muscles that like don't exist on anatomy charts. And the first time I met James was like 6 months ago, and he asked about doing his program, and I told him it was kind of the same idea as Klokov, just not to the same degree.
Oh.
It was like, you're so fast, you're so explosive, you're so strong. This is a guy who's 6 foot, 195 pounds, has benched 450 and deadlifted 650.
Yeah.
And he's been training for that for benching his whole life because of football, but deadlifting for 6 months, maybe.
Jeez.
And I was like,
Just a freak.
yeah, I was like, we're going to do all the stuff that you hate.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't need to get any stronger. Like, you need mobility. He's the most tightly wound spring
CrossFit
ever.
Or no, football players just, man, shoulders and ankles are usually just tore up.
Yeah, I got a new football guy I trained for maybe about 4 years who's switching over to CrossFit as well, and he does not have that issue.
Oh, that's good.
Exceptional
Lucky
mover.
Lucky, yeah, because most guys, they just, all those hits, and anyone who plays a field sport, usually the ankles get tight.
Yeah.
And shoulders are messed up from the hits.
I was actually shocked to see how well he moved with it, because he'd been off at NFL camps and stuff, and then I'm not a big advocate of the Olympic lifts for non-Olympic lifters and non-CrossFitters. Of course, so I'd never had this guy snatch before, so I'd never even really seen him try and do it. So he's just in Nike Freeze, and I was like, do an overhead squat, and just drops down perfect. I was like,
has good mobility. Maybe he had a good strength coach growing up or something. I think that's where a lot of football players fall through the cracks on that mobility stuff. Is the football coach at the high school is just advocating terrible form, and then you get to college and no one's really paying attention, and then you get the pros, and then no one's going to tell you what to do when you get to the pros.
Yeah, I mean, just in that whole industry, just massive discrepancies in the quality of coaching. I got about 50 athletes who are playing Division I football right now, so I see all their programs. Probably programs from 30 different schools, and some I'm like, oh, this is great, and some I'm just like, so who did you know to get this job?
Yeah, no, that definitely happens. But I don't know. Too bad Chris Moore's not here. He's got stories from high school and college football where they're, just put more weight on the bar. If you're not getting low enough, you need to get lower. Put more weight on the bar. It's like, holy shit.
That's basically what ended his college career was shitty strength training.
Yeah, it was the strength training that hurt him, not the football.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's probably the case for so many guys.
So if, you're a young guy playing football, put some emphasis on finding a good strength coach. Even if, say you don't have get to pick, when you're playing, but in the off season, you can definitely go find. There's somebody out there that understands how to move and how to keep you healthy.
Yeah, and that whole idea of how to move is so big. We have our two main kind of mobility movement writers on Juggernaut, Ryan Brown and Dr. Quinn Heenock. And a lot of people know Quinn now because he and Kelly kind of butt heads on some stuff. He wrote Supple Upward versus the World, and then they were on Offline together, but they do a great job for us. I love the stuff they write. They've helped me a ton personally. I last June herniated 2 discs in my back.
Yeah.
And my entire rehab was information that they gave me about how to breathe. And everyone thinks, oh, of course I know how to breathe. I'm alive. But understanding how to breathe properly, to brace a neutral spine position, and how simply you can fix all these mobility issues through improved breathing patterns is a really powerful idea that as more and more people catch on to it, it's going to improve performance across the board for them.
I've been hearing a lot of that lately, a lot of the breathing stuff. Sometimes people improving like mobility in a single session with some, they'll test the shoulder, improve their breathing, and next thing you know, they have improved range of motion.
Yeah, that was one of the first breathing videos, just a YouTube video on our channel called Breathing 101, and it's Ryan taking me through some of these drills. It's like a 20 degree improvement in my internal shoulder rotation in 10 seconds.
So what do they have you do?
Incredible.
Do you have any examples about how to breathe better?
The main breathing drill that I use for, it's kind of like the first thing we teach everyone at clinics, and was the main thing that I was doing to take care of my low back, is laying on the ground, feet flat on the wall, so legs bent at 90 degrees, and learning how to brace in a neutral spine position. So basically to press your low back in the ground and like eliminate that arch, and then create 360 degrees of pressure from there. Especially in the squat, everyone's cued to big air in your belly, push your abs out into your belt. But as soon as you do that and you're just pushing forward, it's putting you into extension in your low back right away. Where if we can brace in a neutral spine position and get those vertebrae essentially stacked on top of each other, then, your skeleton is going to support that weight as, God intended it to do, rather than, always being an extension here and that weight like hanging on your muscles and tendons and ligaments, and you never be able to shut those muscles off. Guys especially highly trained individuals, explosive individuals, live in extension.
With that anterior pelvic tilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that. I actually had a guy message me last week. He's reading Starting Strength, and he's going through the description of like finding, extending out. I was like, go for neutral. Like, keep the abs tight too. Like, this is through a Facebook message. I'm like trying to keep it as like simple and easy to understand. Like, don't go for, because the way he was reading it, he wasn't American, so he didn't understand the English too well. So, and I'm not exactly sure what Ripto's advocating there, the way I read it, but the whole like just extending as hard as you can, not a good idea. I've seen improvements in my jerk when I went to more of a focusing much more on being neutral than extended. Saw a lot more power development there. So, and I imagine, same for the squat and everything too.
Yeah. I mean, squatting, it's controlling my breathing and understanding like how that's going to control my midline stability, and my squat is the strongest it's ever been right now, and just the most technically sound and like simple moving. And it's from learning how to breathe. Yeah. I'm sure everyone listening to the podcast, they're learning how to breathe right now.
So earlier you said that programming for CrossFit athletes is a very small piece of what you guys actually do. What else do you guys do?
Oh, a lot. We're trying to help better educate the the people who want to get stronger and faster and more powerful and healthier across the world. But our real mission is to, I would say, is to help ... improve, help powerlifters improve, strongman, weightlifters, CrossFitters, coaches, trainers, physical therapists, and been able to assemble a team that I'm very proud of and that I'm very confident in their abilities of experts in those unique individual fields, and bring them together and give them a platform to get their message out there. And I think every day more and more people are hearing that message and appreciating it and learning from it.
So you guys you started like 2 years ago.
Well, as the company started almost 5 years ago, and that was really me and another guy named Nate Winkler, who now has moved back to Charleston, South Carolina, and kind of designed the website. But it was us training people in person, high school athletes, college athletes, and it's kind of just the time constrictions of life and people who understand owning a gym and that kind of thing. got tighter and tighter, especially as I was trying to compete as an athlete. And used to be tracking in the shot put and then simultaneously powerlifting and strongman. It just became tougher and tougher to do, so it kind of moved to more of the online stuff. So it's been about 2 years of this current incarnation of Juggernaut and jtsstrength.com, where just bringing on new writers and trying to support more athletes through sponsorships. And
how many writers you guys have now?
Over 30. Yeah, it really might be closer to 50.
These guys are, from powerlifting backgrounds, like mobility expert backgrounds, weightlifting backgrounds.
Yeah,
pretty well rounded
across the board. So, champion, like world class level powerlifters, guys with top 15 totals all time. OTC resident for weightlifting, other guys, Pan Am team.
Thomas Lower with you guys, is that right?
Samantha Lower, his wife. Thomas do a little bit of writing for us.
He does some writing.
Yeah. But probably our most notable weightlifters are Colin Burns, based in Louisville. He was a Pan Am team guy last year. He's a 94 kilo lifter, one of the best snatch in the United States. Donovan Ford, who's an OTC resident, was a world team member last year.
Yeah.
Anthony Pomponio, who's about to be an OTC resident as well. He's based here in California.
We just had a guy come back from the OTC from doing a certification. He says it's pretty cool there. They got quite the spread for food and stuff. So if someone gets the opportunity there, they can just eat and train.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. All right, we're going to wrap this up. Thanks for joining us, Chad. Where should people go to find your stuff?
Our website is jtsstrength.com, so there's 2 S's in a row in that. So that, and then like us on Facebook, Juggernaut Training Systems. I'll fill up your news feed all day. Instagram, YouTube, all the same. It's just all Juggernaut Training Systems. Sign up for our newsletter. Give you like 200 free pages of squat, bench, and deadlift info with that.
Very cool. And after you sign up for his newsletter, go over to barbellshrug.com and sign up for our newsletter, and we'll share with you ways that you might be able to support our show. Thanks. Later.
To learn more about how you can support the show, go to barbellshrug.com and sign up for the newsletter.